All right. Happy Saturday and hello, everyone. Welcome to our TED Talk. And we are talking about the pros and cons of various vehicles that you might use for your Nomad journey. And how do I get to slide two? Let's see. Just a click. Yeah. All right. First off, nothing's perfect, and one size does not fit all. What works for me may not work for you, and vice versa. It's all going to depend on your expected usage, your goals for what it's able to do for you, your budget, etc., for what is going to be the right choice for you. These are generalizations, and I will say something nice and something bad about every one of your vehicles. No, I'll say something bad about yours. I even have your name. No, I don't, but I could.
We're not even going to talk about your type.
Right, we're only barely even mentioning that your type exists. How about that? All right, let's go to the next slide. All right, so who the heck am I? My name's Josh. I'm here with Hillary, who is not currently in attendance. We are in the Wander Lounge bus. We bought our first bus in 2016, and within 45 days, we were full-time in our bus. We bought our second bus 13 months later when we realized that we bought the wrong bus, which is a lot of why we're having this discussion. If you would like to follow us, we're on TikTok and YouTube at Wander Lounge. And this here is Ryan, who people on TikTok know. I think everybody knows Ryan, but why don't you give your spiel for YouTube?
So my name is Ryan. I'm with Seeking Discovery. I've been on the road now for over 2.5 years. I'm in a 40-foot bus, and I do like my bus a lot. So as of right now, I'm not planning on changing to another rig, but there's definitely things I've learned about having a full-size bus. And I was not planning on buying a full-size bus when I got into bus life. So a lot has been learned, but I am glad that I've got a 40-footer.
All right, so let's dive right in. Let's talk about everybody's favorite, commercial RVs. Now, these are the RVs that you can go to the store and buy. Now, the big positives of those, they're already built. So most of us in here, at least if we have Skoolies, we built them all ourselves. It's a huge undertaking. If you don't have those types of skills, you will end up with those types of skills before you're done. It's a lot of work, a lot of learning, and up to you whether or not it's rewarding. The second pro I have is that they come with a manual. So every component that's inside the RV, when you leave the RV dealer, is going to have its documentation in a nice binder. You're not going to be guessing most of the time.
Whether or not you know where you put that binder is a completely different story.
That's fair. Also, if you buy a commercial RV, at least if you buy a new one, you get a warranty.
Yeah.
So if something breaks, you can take it back to the dealer who carries your brand of RV, and they should fix it. Although if you watch much YouTube, you have probably seen some recent stories where that hasn't really been the case.
Well, and hopefully you like that dealer, because you will likely be visiting them in your first 6 months.
Another positive thing about RVs is they are accepted everywhere, at least for a while. As Ryan was talking earlier, you get the RIVA sticker on the side, which is RVIA sticker on the side, which is a manufacturers association that said, hey, let's get together, make a little gang, and make our own sticker, and then convinced a lot of parks and RV parks to require that sticker for entry, meaning if you made your own, you can't get that sticker. If you were a manufacturer who did not put your nickel into that pot, you don't get a sticker. And if you bought your RV before they decided to create the sticker, you don't get a sticker.
So in the same realm of stickers, kind of related, unrelated, RVs have RVIA. If you're looking for some kind of a certification and inspection with your Skoolie, check out NOAA, the National Organization of Alternative Housing. They have a virtual inspection that you can do while you're building, and you will get a stamp and a seal from them, which may help you get into RV parks if that's somewhere you want to go. But again, there's no guarantee because that's an independent organization that is also still not a part of that trade group, the RVIA.
Right, they're both unofficial.
Mm-hmm.
All right, the next piece is the build inside a commercial RV is very well integrated.
Mm-hmm.
They spent a lot of time designing what was going to be put into that space. They've had that same size space for years or decades. You're going to get a lot of functionality crammed in really compactly.
Mm-hmm.
The last positive I have is if you go to an RV dealer, you can finance your RV. You can get a loan, you can pay for it over 5 or 10 or longer years. Whether it lasts to the end of your financing is another story, which
Josh,
we will get to shortly.
Then you just roll it into your new RV loan
Right,
when you go to upgrade 5 years later.
You roll your negative equity into your next loan. So, all right, so let's talk about the cons. All right, the first con, RVs that are commercially manufactured are intended for recreational use rather than full-time living. Now, there are a couple of things that you get because of that. Generally speaking, they are made with less durable components that aren't going to last. They are putting a lot less effort into things like waterproofing. They are using materials like your chairs, your mattress, your sofa that aren't going to just break in, they're going to break through after just a little bit of use. They are the rule for commercial RVs is that they are designed to last for 10 years and your expected use is 3 weekends and 1 week every year. And if they make that goal, then they have achieved it. The second one I have, they are built from lightweight materials, which is great to save fuel and also to save money in the manufacturing side, but those materials are not durable. You will find most commercial RVs, the walls are going to be a very thin sheet of plywood, like what you would find on the back of a cabinet that you bought that came in a box that you had to assemble with Allen wrenches. They're not really designed to take any level of abuse. The next one, if you have one that's a self-driving, a self-propelled RV, they're generally based on a van platform, which we have a lot of vans in here, and we'll be talking about vans some more later on, and we will tell you why that might not be great. Insulation is more or less omitted in commercial RVs because they're designed for fair weather use. You end up with a very inefficient, very power-hungry air conditioner on the roof, or if you've got a big RV of multiple, these are not the newer mini-split inverter style air conditioners. These are the old ones that they made in the 60s that they still make today, mostly for RVs.
Because it's easy, and why change if it still sells?
Right, they are. The air conditioners are cheap, and they can brute force the cold well enough in moderate temperatures.
It's also an easy warranty item because you take 4 bolts out and you slap a new one on.
Slap a new one in. The next line I have, we kind of touched on this. They have a design life of 10 years. When things start to break, your replacement parts can be very expensive, and having a RV dealer or service center work on your rig can be extremely expensive. The meme out there is anytime you come out to an RV dealer, they need about $1,000. I've got down, they are designed in a cookie cutter fashion where if you're 100 feet away from an RV, you can't tell which one is yours because they all look basically the same, right? Besides the different swish on the side of them, the RVs are very similar across the board. And Ryan mentioned how some RVs are solar ready, which means they have one tiny little solar panel that's not going to give you enough power for anything. If you leave it for a week, it might run your little dome light in your bathroom overnight, but that's going to be about it. All right, let's go on to the next one.
Van
Oh, look,
life.
vans. So we've got a couple vans in here
Who's
right
got
now.
vans in here?
Yeah, raise your hand if you have a van. We have just two vans. All right.
Okay, we can make fun of them.
Yeah, well, we're going to make fun of them anyway, regardless of how many vans we're here. We're going to talk about vans. Vans have a lot of pros. Vans are very easy to drive and very easy to park. You can go basically anywhere that you can get a car, you can get your van in there.
Mhm.
Uh, Vans are very stealthy. Nobody's going to see your van and think there's something going on over there. We better keep our eye on them. They're going to see, hey, there's a van, and maybe there's a rack on top. And they're like, that's probably a work van. He's probably got a ladder up there, some PVC pipe or something. Uh, Vans generally get pretty good fuel economy compared to a bigger bus where you're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 to 10 miles per gallon. Some vans will get double that amount. Another positive with vans is there's a lot of vans for sale. Retired work vans are very popular to build campers, and when businesses buy their next van, oftentimes their old van is still perfectly salvageable.
In that same realm, depending on where you're buying those used vans from, you got to think about how did that employee or worker drive that van.
Well, you're going to also have that with everything, but vehicles purchased for somebody who doesn't own it to drive are generally not as well treated as like your own personal vehicle would have been. Next up, you can get all of your maintenance and repair parts from AutoZone, where you're paying low prices for stuff and it's widely available, easy to get. Vans are also easier to insure than at least in school buses.
They fit one of those categories of RVs much easier
Right.
than a big bus.
All right, let's talk about the cons of vans. The biggest con is that a van is small. You don't have a whole lot of room for your build. Generally speaking, you're going to be making difficult choices about what functionality your van is going to have. Uh, you're you will find that most vans don't have a shower. There are exceptions. Most vans do not have a shower. Uh, Many vans don't have indoor cooking capability simply because there's not space. There's no replacement for displacement, and if you can't fit something, it's just not going to make it in. Uh, Another negative with vans is they can be difficult to work on as far as access to the engine goes because it's crammed in so tightly. And this is even more of a factor with newer vans. Like you see, the Sprinters are very popular. You don't want to get under the hood of that if you can avoid it. It's a very tight fit. Another negative is the newer or nicer vans can be pretty expensive. Again, we're talking about Sprinters, where you can spend, if you're buying a new Sprinter, you can spend $60,000 plus on an empty van. Another con, vans stop being stealthy once you start adding to the outside. You put a couple of solar panels or an air conditioner, and people are going to know what you're up to. It's not going to be a secret anymore. And the last one, vans are small. Like, I couldn't, my first bus was a short bus and it was bigger than any of the vans that I've been in so far. And it was way too small for me, at least as a full time environment with two people. If you're a single person, a van can be a really good fit, but it's a tougher sell if there's more than one of you.
Well, and in the same realm of small is height. There are a few vans that you can have people over 6 foot stand in, but a majority of the van shells out there are not accommodating to tall people. So a lot of the vans I step into, I just assume I'm going to whack my head on it when I step in it. So I usually end up hunched, and they're very rarely am I surprised where I can actually stand up and feel like I can stretch out. So keep that in mind if you're on the taller side. Is a van something that will accommodate your height so that you can be comfortable on a day-to-day.
What's the Mercedes? What do they go for?
Like price-wise?
Yeah, the Mercedes Sprinters, they're around 60.
Yeah.
Well, they go
Yeah.
up for sure, but
Yeah, from the factory.
yeah. And that's just for the van. That's not for like Winnebago will build you an RV, or they will sell you an RV that they've already built because they got 1,000 of them in a parking lot somewhere. But they will sell you an RV that's built on that platform if you wanted to go that route. All right, next slide, please.
What are we talking about?
Box trucks. All right.
It's like a cheat code to life.
Yeah. So if you're looking at a box truck, box trucks have a lot of good positives. They have a pretty good market for being able to buy them used for reasonable prices. Box trucks have nice square walls. You don't get that in a bus, and you get that in a few places in a van. You don't get that everywhere in a van. You tend to have a high ceiling in the box. Ryan would have no problem walking into your typical box truck and standing up. And there are some things he might need to step on to reach, even. Box trucks, if you don't paint them and make it obvious that you've built something out of it, can be quite stealthy. No one's going to take a second look at what looks like a UPS or is a rental people. U-Haul truck in a parking lot. You're gonna say, "Oh, whatever, there it is." They're also pretty easy to drive and pretty easy to park. They can typically fit into a single parking space, and they drive essentially like a van or a bigger truck. You also have the advantage of parts being available at AutoZone or places similar to that because they are based on that smaller type of vehicle. But then we go to the cons. And we start off with something that Ryan was talking about. Box trucks typically aren't driven by the people who paid for the box truck. They're rentals or they're driven by employees. And the drivers are not going to take care of them the way that you would take care of it yourself if it were yours. So you will find a lot of box trucks are retired only once they have enough wear and tear that it's costing more to maintain them than is worth. Number two is they are generally based on a van or pickup platform, which we're going to talk more about in a little bit here as we get to some of the bigger vehicles. Box trucks, the box itself is usually constructed of the same thin plywood that you're going to find on a commercial RV. There are some heavier duty versions where you can actually find a steel or aluminum enclosure, but those are rare and will cost you a major premium if that's what you're looking for. Generally speaking, what you're going to find is plywood box with aluminum strips doing a little bit of framing through the length of it. You'll also find that box trucks have the driver's area separated from the box. So to go from driving your house to in your house, you have to get out of your house and walk around to get to a separate door.
But that can always be alleviated with an angle grinder.
Yeah, with enough fabrication, you can fix that problem.
Angle grinder saw up.
Yeah, you get a Sawzall in there and holes open up. Typically, on a box truck, you're not going to have any sort of option for carrying things underneath it, which you don't really have that option on vans, and you don't really have that option on commercial RVs. Box trucks, I think, is where, no, we got one more before that trend ends, and you start to have that feature.
Well, and one thing I just thought of that we didn't talk about ahead of time is if you've got something you need to wheel up or down into a box truck, a lot of them do have that ramp that's stored inside the frame rail, so that could be another pro of a box truck.
Yeah, a pro for box trucks would be that they're often available with that ramp, and some of them will even have a lift gate, which is super nice. A friend of mine has one with a nice lift gate, and he uses it to carry his motorcycle around.
That's exactly what I was
And his
thinking.
old dog is able to get up and down. He has to hydraulic lift the dog from the ground to box truck level.
So if you want an elevator in your house, get a box truck.
Yeah. All right, now we're going to quickly talk about the 4 types of school bus. Now, three of these you'll recognize. One of them you've probably never seen because they're almost irrelevant. But my first bus was one of them, so I have firsthand experience with them. Uh, Type A is the small one. Who has a Type A school bus?
No shorty owners
Nobody
in
has a
here?
Type A school bus in here?
I was gonna say
Yeah,
Sherry,
Marcy has one.
Lily.
Lily has one. All right, well, none of the Type A buses showed up. So that's cool. We can talk extra
We're
bad
just
about
not going to help them anymore.
Yeah, right. Uh, Type B is kind of in between a Type A and a Type C. It is based on a heavier chassis, but it's also very short and has more difficult engine access. We'll get to that. Type C is the conventional looking bus, which is commonly referred to as a dog nose. And Type D is the flat nose, which is more of a transit style bus.
Kind of like Amanda's right there.
Yeah, kind of like Amanda's, kind of like mine. On to the next one.
Oh, your new one. I was like, it's not like your shuttle bus that you brought.
All right, and we have photos so we can keep track as we're going along here. Let's talk about the pros of a Type A bus. Similar to some of the other ones, they're easy to drive and easy to park. They are not much bigger than a pickup truck and will fit all the same places. Speaking of Type A, we just covered your type of bus.
Yeah,
but since
nice
you weren't
of you to
here,
show up.
we're going to make lots of fun of your type of bus. We're on your type of bus right now. They are unintimidating visually. When you see one of these buses, you're not frightened by it.
Nope.
The person driving it, just not the.
Right, potentially. Yeah, you never know who's behind the wheel, but the bus itself in a parking lot, no big deal. Some of the parts for a Type A bus are cheap. You're able to get them at places like AutoZone, as we were talking about earlier, because they are based on a van. The passenger area behind the driver is the same strong steel that you're going to find in a big bus. So that part, like from here back, is very strong and durable. And there's also shuttle buses, which we're going to mention here, which are very similar, except that their shells are fiberglass, but they are otherwise very, very similar to a Type A school bus.
One advantage with a shuttle is you do get that extra height a lot of times when compared to a bus frame.
Yeah, a lot of the shuttles are going to be high headroom, where only some of the Type A school buses are going to be high headroom. Because the school buses usually have kids in them, and the shuttles tend to have adults. Where'd we go? All right, so let's talk about the cons of a Type A bus. First off, it is based on a van. Vans are great. Vans have comparably low weight capacities compared to the bigger chassis. A van is going to have hydraulic brakes. A van is going to usually have a gas engine or a diesel that you would also find in a pickup truck. Same with the transmission. It's going to be the same type of thing you'll be able to get at the Ford dealer or the Dodge dealer in a different type of vehicle. They're small. You won't find Type A buses. I don't think I've seen one longer than 6 windows. A window is 2.5 feet wide. You can do the math. They can be quite hard to work on, similar to other things based on vans, where you have about this wide of access from the front of it, and you have a doghouse you have to take off from the inside to get to the rest of the engine. Not conducive to quick and easy maintenance. Another issue with a Type A bus is your miles per gallon usually aren't much better, if better at all, than a larger bus. Even though looking at the two, you would expect this thing is clearly going to go twice as far in a gallon of fuel as that monstrosity. The last one on my list is that a Type A bus tends to command a higher price on the used market for reasons unknown.
I think it comes back to the logic of people are intimidated by larger vehicles. So they look at a Type A and they're like, oh, that's about the size of a pickup truck. I can drive that. So there's that subconscious mind of like, it's easy to drive, so we're going to pay more for it.
Right. I think that is
as Lily's confirming over
80%
there.
or more of that. Yeah. Yeah. Were you here for the pros of the Type A bus? You
Yeah,
were, yeah.
she had just walked in.
Unintimidating. Yes. Oh. All right. We're going to really quick talk about Type B buses. There are really only two buses that were Type B. The Thomas Vista at shorter lengths, and Bluebird has one called the Microbird, which is based on the same platform as a FedEx or UPS truck. It's a GM platform with the same GM diesel that you could get in a 3500 series GMC truck.
Okay.
They are somewhere between a Type A and a Type C. They are difficult to work on, similar to a van, but they use heavy frames that have a large weight capacity like the bigger buses. They are pretty uncommon, and the access to things is just wonky. But I'm probably the only one. Yes, that is the technical term. You can look it up. I'm probably the only one here who has ever owned one. Anybody owned a Type B bus? What bus did you have? Okay, you had the Microbird. Is it Microbird or Mini Bird that's the bread van? Okay.
It wouldn't have anything to do with length.
Well, the length is the requirement of it, yeah. Only the short ones, because Thomas, the Vista, was available in a 40-foot, and it has all the same negatives, but it's technically a Type C, just because of that length.
Yeah, it looks like somebody took a dog nose and just like smacked it in the front, and the engine slid back.
Yeah, one positive about the Type Bs is a lot of people called our bus cute. All right. Type C and D. So we are combining the two types of larger bus together for a little bit here. We're going to split off in a minute because they have a lot of similarities between them. First off, they are built on a medium-duty truck platform. Now, when you look at a pickup truck and your pickup truck says it's a Super Duty, that is a light-duty truck. Don't listen to what they're telling you. It's crap. Medium-duty pickup truck is a step above anything that you can buy from your Ford or Chevy dealer. They are designed to be durable. They're designed to be maintainable. They are using heavier duty equipment than you will find in your shuttle bus, Kimberly.
Kimberly, what you giggling at
She's
over
giggling,
there?
so she gets this. So the second item on the list, they have strong steel construction all the way around. The whole bus is made of metal, and the construction that they use on these buses is designed to protect our most valuable things in the world.
Money.
Right. Yes, the most valuable things in the world, the children that you've spent all of your money on.
Well, and I always tell folks when they're trying to determine bus, van, whatever, go to your favorite search engine and the images section and look up a bus crash.
And then look up an RV crash.
A bus may be upside down, but it is still physically a bus. You can a lot of times roll it back over, start the engine, and drive it away. With an RV, you have a pile of confetti.
Yes.
But it's not a fun party.
Not a fun party. All right. The next thing, the interior space. These buses, I guess I kind of cover it later in the list too. These buses can be quite large. They are 7.5 feet wide. That is the standard width. And they are in lengths going anywhere from 24 up to 40 feet. 40 feet. Shh.
Kimberly's is an anomaly.
Kimberly is counting her bumper, which she doesn't live in her bumper. She lives inside. Yeah. Look at your model number. There's a number in there that represents the length. It won't be 42. Guarantee it's not 42.
Someone who was at the factory.
Yeah,
and
it's probably like 38.5 actually.
They cut once, they didn't measure,
Right.
and
Yeah.
so you got an extra long bus by accident.
There you go.
It was an accident.
All right, so following the interior space is the exterior space. These buses being very durable and built on these heavy chassis, you can put a lot of stuff above them and a lot of stuff underneath them. For example, I carry all of my water tanks underneath my bus. I have 165 gallons of fresh water and another 55 gallons of gray water that doesn't take up any room inside my bus.
And on a lot of these buses, especially if they're activity buses, you can find them with built-in storage. And you can put all of your bells and whistles in that storage.
Yeah, you can carry a lot of stuff that doesn't need to be inside on the outside. All right, let's go to the negatives. All right, the cons of the Type C and Type D. Some of the parts can be expensive, and the obvious one to point at is tires. If you have a van, you have a Type A, you have a commercial RV, your tires are going to be 100, 200, 250 if you're buying really nice tires. When you're looking at the 11R 22.5s that go on basically all of these bigger buses, you're looking at spending, if you need one, you're going to spend $600. If you can shop around, you can spend $450, $500 a piece.
And sometimes, if you have a bus like mine, you have the slightly smaller version, so you save a few bucks.
A few bucks.
What size is that?
Josh, what size is
Yours
that?
19 and a half?
Sure.
Yeah, probably 19.5s, which is a fairly common tire. My Type B bus had the 19.5s.
Because I don't have wheel wells in my bus, because it had the flat floors for the wheelchairs.
All right, the second point here, the Type C and D are heavy because they are made of steel. If you go and weigh your bus, I weighed mine when it was completely empty, the interior walls. Why is Kimberly laughing so much?
I think she's finally realizing that this kind of stuff refers to her.
Oh, okay.
She's so used to being in the cute bus category,
Oh, yeah, no,
and now she's in
we
the
don't have that
monstrosity
here.
category.
Yeah. We don't have the cute bus. We have the unintimidating category. Anyway, they're very heavy. When I stripped my bus down, I had to get it weighed as part of the process of converting it to a motorhome, and it weighed 19,500 pounds.
How about after?
More. I have 2,000 pounds worth of water that I carry around, right? Like there are RVs out there that weigh less than 2,000 pounds.
No wonder Nikki's bus left ruts as she
Yeah,
arrived.
so did mine. So in addition to being heavy, they're big. They are generally hard to park. You will find once you're above about 32 feet, you cannot fit in a double parking space like at Walmart where they've got two spots that are joined together. You're going to have to start parking sideways and taking up 8 or 10 spots.
I prefer 14.
Whatever. Yeah. Or you can be like that and split the line all the way down, and then Ivan will make a video about what a jerk you are. There is a learning curve to drive. The Type C, your learning curve is just really about the length and the amount of tail swing that's behind it. With a Type D, you also have to learn how to drive sitting in front of your front wheels. So your steer tires are back here, which is a very strange feeling that will take you a little bit of getting used to. Once you learn it, you're good, but it does require some learning. Another con of these is they are not stealthy. You don't have to do much to your bus before it's obvious that you've got a Skoolie. Most states don't let you keep them yellow, at least not for long. As soon as you put paint on there, you're clearly not a school bus anymore. You take the logo and the name of the school district that it belonged to off, and you're clearly not a school bus anymore.
Yeah. Whenever I go somewhere and people are like, oh, can I come see your bus, your house, get a tour? Or hopefully I'm not bothering you. My answer is, well, if I wanted to be left alone, I wouldn't be traveling in a 40-foot blue bus.
Right. Yeah, and that's kind of a secondary part too, not being stealthy. Not only will people notice you, but people will become attracted to your bus. It is an attention getter, and you will have people coming up to you in parking lots asking for tours.
At the gas pump.
Or
Or
at
you're
the gas
pumping
pump.
diesel.
Right.
Outside, they'll no longer be asking if I have a menu.
That's
Because yours
true.
look like a food truck more than
Yeah.
anything.
All right, the next one. Next one on the list is there are going to be some unfamiliar parts to a bigger bus if you've never driven something like that before. Medium duty truck diesel engines, for one, are something that probably none of us have experience with before buying our first school bus. Air brakes, a lot of folks are very intimidated by air brakes, despite all of their advantages. I can tell you air brakes are better, and you might still buy something with hydraulic brakes. The next one on there is emissions. And this is something that is going to become an increasingly larger problem for us. Prior to 2004, any bus that you bought, you could expect you're getting a good, solid, reliable diesel motor that was going to last you for years and years and give you very little trouble. 2004 comes around and the EPA says you need to clean your act up and start putting parts on your bus that don't make it run better, don't make it make any more power. They do make them break, and sometimes in catastrophic ways. Kelsey.
And we're pretty sure she's still on the live, so we
well,
can call her out up there.
I told her I was going to. Actually, I think I said I wasn't going to mention her by name, but I did.
Oh, yep, she just commented.
All right, Kelsey.
She's watching with us.
She knows. Emissions are something that as a community we need to get more used to because this equipment is becoming commonplace. You haven't been able to buy a bus since 2004 that didn't have some of it, and the older buses are drying up. I have probably the newest bus you can get that is still mechanical. Those years are gone. Like the mechanical engines, you're going to be super lucky to find one. You're at least getting electronic controls, but more than likely buses that you're going to find on the used market that are still in good enough shape that you would consider buying it to do a new build are going to be newer than 2004, and they're going to have at least an EGR valve, if not some of the other newer equipment. There were three main points. 2004 introduced the EGR. 2007 introduced the diesel particulate filter, and 2010 introduced the diesel exhaust fluid. None of these things make your engine run better. They don't improve your gas mileage. They only improve the sniffer test, and they will all break. They will all require maintenance, and some of the failures can be catastrophic. So if you're thinking about buying a bus, make sure you're paying attention to what engine it has because some are much worse than others. I'm looking at you, Kelsey.
So Kelsey is saying that hers did not have any of the emissions stuff.
Kelsey's engine was already rebuilt once before she bought it.
Is there any way to make diesel burn clean?
Diesel doesn't burn that unclean to begin with, but under certain circumstances, if it's tuned poorly, or if you're in a situation where you really shouldn't be pushing the gas pedal all the way down, like you're already at your top speed, that'll blow smoke. But
So you diesel.
yeah, diesel burns a little less clean than gasoline, but when you start adding the emissions equipment into it, when it comes to things like durability and longevity, it's done way more harm than good. But it's the reality. So let's talk about the next one. Not all buses are outfitted for travel the way we think of travel. They're designed to go pick up kids, drive through neighborhoods, go from stop sign to stop sign, hit maybe 35 miles an hour during the day, and they use lower end equipment or lower ratio rear axles and transmissions that prioritize being smooth over being able to efficiently put power down to the ground. And I specifically call out the AT545, which is also the most common transmission you will find in a bus made before 2004. So you've got a conundrum there. Your typical bus, and I would say typical meaning 70+% of them made before 2004 will have an AT545 and will have an axle ratio that gives them a top speed under 62 miles per hour. So you have to keep that in mind when you're looking. The axle ratio is more likely to be different than the transmission. But if you're looking at newer buses, they stopped making that transmission in 2003. So anything 2004 or older or 2004 or newer will have emissions, but not that crappy transmission.
So the moral of the story is you don't want a Caravan with Josh and Hillary because they have that transmission.
Right, we have that transmission. I can tell you at length all of the reasons why you don't want it, but the summary is you don't want it. It will be your limiting factor in travel. The last one on this slide, the front of the bus is a fishbowl where you are surrounded by glass, and the back of the bus is a steel can, meaning the only thing that's more efficient at transferring heat from the sun than the steel can in back is the glass in the front, and there are miles of it. That will be your big losses in thermal performance. It's going to be your windshield, your entry door, your driver's window, and once you get those insulated, covered, whatever you end up doing with it, otherwise separated from the back of the bus is just one giant heat sink that is taking the extra heat from the sun and putting it into your living space. So this is why things like insulation is so critical. A lot of folks will buy a bus and leave their walls up and not insulate inside, which is fine if you are in moderate climates, but you get south of, say, North Carolina, and you will know why you should have done that. Or you stay north of North Carolina in the winter, and you will know why you should have done that. All right, now we've got the pros specifically of the Type C. The conventional layout is easier to drive because it's a familiar experience. It's like driving a really big, really slow pickup truck. But your position relative to your steer tires is going to feel natural. There's no learning curve on that. What you will have to learn is just how far back your back wheels are and how much tail swing is behind it.
Because when you go right, your tail is going left.
Yes. You will also find that Type C tends to have very good engine access. If you're doing maintenance or repairs, it's very easy to get to those things, with exceptions.
Except when you got to replace a sensor.
Not your ICP sensor,
and
but
they didn't have a half-inch of clearance.
Most things are going to be relatively easy to get to by opening the large hood, which folds forward, and you have all this great access.
Yes.
Uh-oh, puzzle time.
We are still alive, and there's your puzzle piece.
All right, let's talk about the bad parts, otherwise known as why Ryan's bus sucks.
What?
Let's play. All right, there we go. So the first con of the Type C is they can be pretty loud.
What'd you say?
The first con of the Type C.
What'd you say?
Okay.
I can't hear anymore because I drive my bus so much.
He's still deaf, is the joke. But yeah, they can be pretty loud. Those diesel engines are not quiet to begin with, and you're sitting awfully close to it with just this much metal separating you from it. The other con is that the front engine compartment, which depending on the engine could be 4 feet, 5 feet, 6 feet, subtracts your living space from your total length.
So like with my bus, bumper to bumper, I'm 40 feet, but my living space, so the back of the driver's seat to the back of the bus is only 30 feet. So I lose that 10 feet of buildable living area as compared to a flat nose.
Yep. And so let's move on to the pros of the Type D. Way more pros of the Type D than the Type C.
Hey,
not at all. Yeah, it's not that I have 2 of these.
At least I can set my cruise control at more than 60 miles
Only
an hour.
because I enabled your cruise control, buddy, and don't think I can't turn it back off.
Okay, here's the money.
I have the equipment with me.
I cut the cord.
My bus is mechanical. There is no cruise control. My new bus has cruise control.
I love my cruise
Yes,
control.
cruise control is a great feature. Mechanical buses don't have cruise control. All right, so the pros of the Type D bus, you get the maximum buildable interior space compared to the exterior space. So you are sitting like I can touch the windshield, which is the farthest forward thing on my bus while I'm driving. It's just right there. And the only thing between me and the glass is the steering wheel, and there's nothing in front of that glass. The rear engine models, who has a rear engine Type D bus? 1, 2, all right, 3, 4. Those things are quiet.
Well, at least where you're driving.
Right. For the driver, they are quiet because your motor is 40 feet behind you. Everything about the drivetrain is happening at enough distance that it's not going to bother you while you're driving. The front engine models have a much shorter wheelbase. So where you guys get into a Walmart parking lot and say, oh, how am I going to get out of this situation? The front engines can just whip right around. Do I cover that in the negatives? Let's make sure we do. Yes. Okay. So we won't expand on that yet. The Type D buses have more engine options that are not available in other buses, like the Cummins 8.3, which is a very good motor if you take care of it and don't ignore your gauges.
Or have a dented oil.
Right.
pan.
No names mentioned because she's not here to defend herself. You could also get the DT530, which is the big brother of the DT466, which is considered by many to be the best engine that they put in these. But this is even better, even bigger, and it's only available in a rear engine Type D configuration. Let's see. They are often spec'd out for non-route use, meaning they're not designed to go through neighborhoods from stop sign to stop sign, never doing more than 35 miles per hour. These are often designed to take kids on field trips on the highway, so they are able to do highway speeds. They have better transmissions, they have more appropriate rear axle ratios, and they, from the bus district at least, tend to come with higher speed limiters programmed into them. Sometimes the cruise control is already on.
Oh, wow.
It's rare, but it's happened. The last thing here is on the rear engine, you have a nice side door halfway back, give or take. Some of them are actually quite wide. The one on my rear engine bus is about this big. I don't think Ryan would make it through the side door, and I could if I turned sideways. But they're designed for kids to be pushed out.
Pushed out while driving down
Right.
the
I
interstate.
mean, you decide for yourself what speed you'll be doing this at.
Tuck and roll.
Right. Tuck and roll. You have to learn these things. Yeah. Or in the immortal words of Butthead, land running. All right, let's go on to the negatives of the Type D. All right. The front engine Type D is very loud. It is louder than the Type C. You're sitting, like from where I'm sitting, if I were driving my bus, my engine would be right here, and it would come back to roughly here. So this whole section is my engine. I am 2.5 feet away from it, and there is nothing separating me from the noise and the heat, if we're being fair. With a rear engine bus, you have a very long wheelbase. And if you've ever wanted to know what it was like to drive a train, that is the easiest way to find out. The other negative for rear engine is there is no large back door, which a lot of us end up building so that it becomes useless anyway. But some folks have their back door to, like my first build, my back door gave me one bus window worth of garage that was outside accessible and separated from the interior compartment otherwise. And I'm definitely not the only person to do that. Or like you have, like your bed is up against it, right? But you also have storage underneath it that's accessible from outside the bus.
It also made it easy when it came time to do construction, getting long sheets of plywood
Right,
and
yeah,
being able to just walk those in the back door.
Getting a full sheet of plywood through that is a lot easier than navigating it through the entry door that's, what, this wide maybe?
And you have a up and twist turn.
Yeah, and going around the corner.
Yeah.
The other thing I'll mention that is a positive about a rear engine bus is oftentimes there's extra room in the engine compartment where you can mount things that go in there, like potentially your generator, or carry things like your fluids, oil, hoses, things like that you don't need to bring inside, but maybe don't deserve their own compartment, or it'd be otherwise difficult to have their own compartment.
So you're leaving your hose outside?
It's not outside. It's the green room. It's the mud room. Yeah. I mean, what I do is I hook the ends of the hose together, so it doesn't matter if it's inside or outside. All right. Well, that mostly wraps up our slides, and we are going to open it up to any questions, or if anybody thinks I got something wrong. If you were offended by what I said about your bus, now is your opportunity to air your grievances.
Ryan?
My bus is better than your bus.
Your bus, your current bus is better than my awning's better than yours. My water heater.
No, you've got the
yours.
electric awning.
Yeah.
It's more likely to snap in the wind.
I've got the push a button and you have an awning, push another button, you don't have an awning.
But I've got the triangle, and the triangle is the strongest shape.
Mine is a triangle and it's spring loaded. My awning's better than yours. No. That's just it.
I go old
My
school.
water heater's better than yours.
I'm happy with my water heater.
I have a remote control where I can set my water temperature. Right?
Well,
How do you change your water temperature, Ryan?
I don't have to.
Right? How do you make it hotter when you want to take a shower, or when you do your dishes versus when you take a shower? I just turn the cold on too.
It just has a mixer valve.
Mm-hmm. What else is better about my bus? Yeah.
On the C model,
Yes.
the engine noise. Has anybody tried limiting that with soundproofing?
There are folks who have done that, and I haven't ridden in one myself. I've heard that can be effective on the C and the D front engines by putting a layer of sound deadening, like what's the one, Dynamat, or similar. And actually, there's another one that's similar to Dynamat that is both sound and heat resistant, which would be more effective on the Type Ds. Yeah.
I've done a lot with the soundproofing. I didn't know if it would be effective or not.
Yeah, from what I've heard, and like I said, no personal experience, I've heard that it can work very well. All right, sure. Grievance number 2.
Yeah, you mentioned emissions and a lot of stuff with the Type C and D because of the stuff with the EPA. Engines don't last as long. Is that not also an issue with types A and B?
So the big differences are with the Type C and D, when you're in the medium duty market, the failures that you get tend to be more catastrophic. You have some engines that were in both. So the question for those who couldn't hear, the question was, are the emissions problems you find on the newer C and D not also there for the Type A and the other smaller vehicles? The answer is they are there, but where you have like a Cummins ISB, which is also in a Dodge pickup, the bigger motors are going to be more affected than the smaller. That's how it's played out, because the auto manufacturers have been doing emissions equipment since like 1981, right? Like, when was the first EGR valve put into a gasoline car? It's been a long time. Where the diesel side, Navistar never had to do that. Cummins never had to do that. And for whatever reason, they got it really wrong. Navistar specifically, if we want to call out the worst diesel engine that you can get in a bus, and you can get in a Type A or a Type C or a Type D, and it's what Kelsey has. It's the 6.0 liter, which is available from Ford as the Power Stroke 6.0, or from Navistar as the VT365. And the joke is that it is a grenade made of mayonnaise with the pin already pulled. Like, the emissions equipment will cause your engine to fail. Right. But you also find, like, the DT466 in later years have problems with things like cavitation from using the wrong coolant, which, what a ridiculous thing. You have holes being bored into your engine by your coolant because you didn't put the right additive in it. You'll find like when you get into the newer stuff, you have the DPF. The DPF will clog and you will overheat. Your your diesel exhaust fluid, you'll run out, or the sensor determining how much you have in your bottle will go bad, and it'll put you in limp home mode because you're not squirting juice into your catalytic converter. Even though otherwise, like there's nothing wrong with your motor runs fine, but we can't squirt this juice into the exhaust, and so you're going to be limited to second gear and 20 miles per hour until you get that fixed. That's an expensive fix. We're talking for a replacement for that entire system is like $15,000. Yeah, like at that point, you're buying another bus, right? Right, and if you do go the route of deleting your emissions equipment, you're breaking federal law, and the fines for that are astronomical.
30,000 for the person and 30,000 for the shop.
Yeah, if they find the shop who did it, if you didn't do it yourself, which if you have an electronic engine, which you will because all the newer ones are, somebody had to program out the requirement of that emissions equipment. In most cases, there are a few cases where you don't actually have to do that, but in most cases, that had to be programmed out. And that shop is on the line too. So you really don't see much of that. What you do see is folks trying to avoid those engines in general, or spending extra attention on the care and feeding of their EGR. Kimberly's here.
Ryan has a good point that he talks to people when they're like gawking around at UCs and stuff at his bus. And that is, he talks about the window height and the height inside the bus. And that's actually really important to people who have tall people living in their bus. So you want to share that? Or
Sure. So it's a quick little visual hack if you're in the market for a bus and there's photos posted online of it, but it doesn't say what the interior height is. Buses typically come in two heights, school buses that is, 6 foot and 6'6" from the factory. So the easiest way to tell them is if you look at the driver window next to the cockpit and then the first passenger window behind it, if the tops of the windows match each other, that is a 6-foot bus. If the passenger windows are raised above where the driver window is, that's usually a sign that it's a 6'6" bus. So that's a very easy way to quickly check something with a visual and know right away whether you can ask more questions if you're interested or move on to the next bus because it's not tall enough for your needs.
Well, let me tell you about how you're wrong.
Oh, great.
Have you seen my bus?
I mean, I've seen it.
So my windows for the passengers are exactly the same top as the driver window. I have a high headroom bus. I have a 6'6" bus.
too.
The reality is
Maybe it's a Bluebird thing then.
Bluebird, typically you're right for Bluebird.
Okay.
Like most of the time that's the case, but school buses are built for the customer. Every school bus is built by hand to the customer's requirements. And if the customer says, I want it like this, and they have paid enough money, then the bus manufacturer will build whatever they've asked for. Like generally speaking with a Bluebird, you can look at the difference of height between the passenger window and the driver's window, and that's going to be accurate, but it's not always going to be accurate. What is accurate is on Thomas's. If you look at a Thomas bus, the driver's area is built to the same height regardless of the roof height. And you can look and see, does it go up just behind the driver, or does it go flat, or does it go down just behind the driver? And that's a very easy way to tell on Thomas's. Now, other brands like you find on a Type A bus, the Collins and manufacturers like that, you almost need to go inside and tell.
Mine's international, and they're the same, but mine's a 6'6".
Yeah.
But isn't International the chassis?
International IC Bus is their bus brand.
Okay.
International went from only making platforms for other Bluebird and Thomas to basically Freightliner bought Thomas and said, you're all going to be Freightliner now. And so International couldn't sell to them anymore, and they wanted to have their own brand going forward.
Good to know.
Yeah. All right. Do we have any questions from the audience and TikTok. This is you guys' opportunity to throw some questions out. Anything that's not on the screen right now, we didn't see. So put your questions in if you have them and would like them answered.
Last opportunity.
We'll give them just a minute.
Do you ever
to
think
type.
if they're gonna, like they did in gasoline engines, they kind of got the emission thing straightened out to some extent?
You know, that would be nice, but the evidence to the contrary is Navistar, who most folks know is International, their engine division, has publicly stated that they have designed their last diesel engine, and they are becoming an electric engine manufacturer. Cummins has a line of electric engines as well. I think especially if you look at International, because they got hurt bad by emissions. Like International had this awesome partnership with Ford where they were making all the diesel engines for Ford, and they were great. The T444E, otherwise known as the 7.3 liter Power Stroke, is the best engine they ever put in a Type A bus, period. They have not put anything even close since then. And the engine that replaced that and the one that replaced that were so bad that Ford ended their relationship with Navistar and now makes their own in-house diesel engine. That hurt International in a big way, and it's probably a big part of the reason why they're getting out of the market.
Have you heard anything about them putting another thing doing it semi trucks, where they run a diesel engine in the front as a generator, and they have an electric powered rear end?
I haven't seen the hybrid type. I have seen a hybrid school bus. I think it was more of a conventional where there's only one set of wheels that are still driven, and they're being driven by both mechanisms, depending on which one was active at the time.
I've seen them doing it to semi trucks. I didn't know if that would be something that somebody would try.
I think like Bluebird, you can already buy all electric Bluebirds that have like that's gonna suck for us when those become the norm because the range on them is around 100 miles, and the charge time on the mega chargers is overnight to get that 100 miles again. That's going to change things for us. Like we're in the golden era right now. Like if you want to buy a school bus, buy it now and don't wait. Take this advice and go buy the best bus you can find, because in a couple of years they're not going to be there. What do we have up here?
Kelsey threw something up there.
Let's see. Kelsey says crazy because electric isn't any better for the environment. Well, what electric does is it moves the problem to a central location of burning all those fossil fuels until we start getting into better ways of generating the power. Then that's absolutely the case. We do have forms of energy that are safe, economical, and clean. But we haven't been able to build a new plant since the 70s. I wonder why that is.
Hey, Josh, let's build a nuclear powered bus.
Let's do it. Yeah. Sounds
Next year, Bus Bonanza.
Let's see. Kelsey said my hybrid battery went out on my 2010 Prius, and it was gonna be a $5,500 repair. That sounds about right. And if you look at the batteries that they're putting in the Bluebird buses, I actually got a hold of a PDF that they were using as a demonstration for a school district trying to pitch their diesel buses. And first off, the diesel bus cost literally 3 times what, or the electric bus cost 3 times what the comparable diesel cost. But they were trying to pitch it as you'll make up for it in 10 years of operating costs since you're not spending money on diesels, completely forgetting about the whole electric bill.
Well, and subsidies on or grants to buy the electric buses right now as well.
School buses are almost always bought by grants anyway.
Oh.
Like school districts rarely spend their own money on it. The crappy part about that is most school districts, when they get a grant for buses, it has a rider attached to it where they have to destroy in a unusable manner the bus that it's replacing. You won't see many used buses in California because the standard is you have to drill a hole through the engine block and pour in sand. So it's not even good at the junkyard for parts, after at least engine parts. Let's see. I think
Focus.
those are the end of. Oh,
Transmission on your bus. I've got a Type C bus. Is there anything in the bin that would tell me what the transmission, or do I have to climb up under the plate, or is there?
so the most accurate way is to look for the plate. I have an image that shows the shift lever for all the different types of transmissions that are found in these buses that is 95% accurate. You can almost say like, if you tell me what letters are on the shifter, I can tell you what transmission it is. Right? Like you've got a reverse, you got a neutral. What's under that? Is it D? Is it OD?
I'll look at my video when I tell you.
Okay. Yeah, and I can share that image with you also, because just at a glance, like you can tell what it is. If you have one if you're concerned it's the 545, like the obvious way to tell when you're driving it is try going up a hill, and when your RPM goes up as it gets harder to go up, does your speedometer go up with it, or do they go opposite directions? Because the 545, your RPM will increase while your speed decreases because it doesn't have any mechanical connection. It's always on the torque converter. But if they're locked in, like your RPM goes up and so does your speed, then you have something better. Literally any transmission other than the 545 will have a lockup function.
So are the transmissions not engine specific? They're just-
Correct. Yeah, the transmission with the 545, another caveat is it is a very low maximum input power that even the smaller diesel engines are able to exceed unless they're tuned really low. So if you've got like a Cummins 5.9, you've got a T444E, maybe even you've got a Cat 3126 or a DT466 that have been detuned to no more than 210 horsepower, you might have an AT545.
Well, I got the MB906. Does that help you?
So that's a slightly newer model, so it's less likely to have an AT545, which doesn't mean it doesn't, but based on the year, like there are more good options available when the MBs were out.
It has more than 3 speeds.
The 545 is a 4-speed. Yeah.
4 speeds.
Yeah.
So it has more than 4 speeds.
If it's got more than 4, then you've got a good transmission. Yeah. And if you have a push button shifter, then you have the best transmission.
That's the
The 3000 series. Yeah. That's what Michael Nunley has. I know when he pushes the gas down, his bus goes. It doesn't sit there and dump a lot of heat out the side for no reason. It just goes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got the 2000 series, and the only way I found out was I crawled under and wiped off the plate until I could read what it said.
You also could have told if you looked at my image.
Well, I didn't even know. I've known you now for multiple years, and I didn't even know you had that.
I post it every time somebody says, I can't tell what transmission I've got. I post it up.
Well, I'll just ignore your posts.
I know, that's probably true. Let's see. What do we got?
So you didn't want to make everybody feel bad about their bus, so you didn't talk about how great coaches are, right?
Well, we kind of covered coaches in the commercial RVs because if you're converting, that's different than the commercial RV, I guess. Like I wouldn't group Ryan or Ivan in with those guys.
Yeah, but I think that's his point. We should have done a section of the presentation on coaches.
But there are none of those here.
Well, I mean, Doug and Mindy are back there.
That's true, but they're not here. So if you want something better than a school bus, you got a bigger budget and you want to put up with a lot more headache, look into coaches. Coaches are very cool when done right. Ivan LaCroix has an amazing one. Who else has a good one that you would say is really a great coach? That doesn't currently need transmission work. Wait, that doesn't currently need transmission work.
Does theirs need transmission work?
Evidently, yeah. That's what I'm told. Being the guy with the diagnostic tool.
Are you talking about? No, Doug and Mindy
Yeah.
have transmission stuff. They're talking about a different coach.
Oh,
The white ones that were just on the other side of my new bus at one.
okay, but they're not here at all.
No, they're not.
Yeah, we can't point at them.
Yeah. Last chance for questions.
Coaches can be very cool. So we have another question. Dan K. Daddy says, recommend a raised roof or does it lose its structural integrity? I personally am not a fan of a raised roof. I think if you need something that's taller, you should buy something that's taller. I also find it difficult to use that extra space, especially when my wife is only 3 apples tall. But you can do a roof raise well. You can make it strong. If you don't know how to do it, you shouldn't, generally speaking, because the structural integrity of the top of your house is pretty important.
It also changes your center of gravity and center of mass, so you got to be careful with how you load up the rest of your build, because a lot of times they become a little bit more top heavy, and you'll see them bouncing around a lot more as they're making turns and whatnot.
Yeah, insurance companies don't like raised roofs or wood stoves. So those are two things to make sure you've looked into before taking action on. And I've been in a lot of buses, and a number of them did have roof raises, and I've never stepped in and said, I need to do that. Like, I've stolen ideas from every other kind of bus out there, but I've never gotten the idea in my head that I needed to raise my roof.
Awesome.
So I guess that's it.
Are you, Josh?
I am about 6 foot. Depends on how my back's feeling that day. Sometimes I stand a little straighter than others.
Repair manuals. I haven't had good luck.
I've had really good luck for the particulars of what I have in my buses.
I've got one, a good one for the engine, but as far as like the hubs and the chassis,
So-
you got to work on the chassis.
So the chassis, for the most part, the thing with medium duty truck platforms is they're very generic. There's only a couple of ways of doing stuff. Like, if you look at your air brake system, you got the same air brakes that I got. I can take a part off of mine, put it on yours, and vice versa. It's going to work just fine. They're designed that way, almost to be interchangeable. You're not going to surprise people at a workshop who will run across whatever you happen to have in your bus. Information that you find on another chassis is almost certainly going to apply to yours. You will have things like there are different types of wheel hubs. Any of those wheel hubs, like the wheel hub you have on yours, is on a million other types of truck, even if the school bus parked next to you doesn't have the same hub.
Kimberly?
I'm wondering, you're talking about like the little vans like being shoved in and stuff,
Mhm.
under the hood and all crammed in the doghouse and stuff. Are the bigger buses typically, like the rear engines or the dog motors and stuff, are they simpler to work on? Or are they all just as
So-
complicated as more expensive things?
The stuff that's inside them can even be exactly the same, right? Like a Type A Ford bus with a T4 or with a 7.3 Power Stroke is going to have the same running gear as a Type C with a T444E. It's the same engine. You have better access to it. Like, you open the hood up, you can walk around on top of the engine if that's what you're into. You can stand next to it on both sides of it. You can get underneath it, and there will be this much space. You can get full access to the top of it. Whereas if you look at, say, Shelley's bus, her hood opens, it's about this wide. And the engine is this wide, right? And what you get up here, you get your radiator, you get your air conditioner condenser, and a couple other things, and then your fan, and then your engine actually starts pretty much right where the hood ends. So most of the stuff you would need to do on that, you're doing from either inside, or you have had to disassemble some of the front of the bus to get to it. Which, on the front engine Type Ds like mine, I've had the front of my bus off before because I needed to get to something in there, and that's a rare enough occasion that while I was in there, I changed my front main seal, I changed my water pump, I changed my idler pulley, I took care of the killer dowel pin, which is a thing on Cummins 5.9s, and a couple other things, just because I don't ever plan on taking all that stuff off again, and that's the only way to get to it. But with a bus like, I'll pick on Shelley's again, or let's pick on Kelsey. On a bus like Kelsey's, if you had to change your alternator belt or your alternator, that's a bad day. Like, that's a rough day. Like, on mine, I can change both of those from above. because I've got full access to the top of the engine, and I've changed my alternator actually twice since I've owned the bus. And I've changed my serpentine belt like 3 times. I carry a spare. And I can do all that from up top easily enough. But if I had to change it on hers, I'd be sad.
Be a bad week.
I'd get it done in a day, but I'd be sad. I'd be hurting after the end of that day. All right. Let's see. Does the insurance company need to know if it's a raised roof? If you expect to have coverage instead of just a card, then yes, the insurance company needs to know you have a raised roof. They will use any excuse they can find to deny payout on a claim. And having a structurally modified bus that was not disclosed, they will absolutely say, oh, well, you violated the terms of your policy and your insurance is void. You definitely don't want to go down that road. Insurance is something you don't want to mess with. And as romantic as wood stoves are, and as great as they are, if you have some female coming over to visit you that evening, don't put it in your bus. Your insurance, well, yeah, I've got an audience here. Yeah, if you have someone of the other persuasion coming over, and the wood stove can be a very romantic, beautiful thing to have in there, but your insurance company will tell you that you're not covered because you have a wood stove inside your bus.
Just like a candle.
Yeah. It's just like a candle. Yes, a permanently affixed candle.
She said, just light a
Oh,
candle instead.
There you go. Yeah.
You might get by when you're paying the premium.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if it's
When it comes time
disclosed,
for them to pay out, they're gonna notice that right off.
Mm-hmm.
if you disclose to them when you got the policy, you have it in writing, like you put down the modifications that you've done, and they still approved it, and it's still covered by their underwriter, then you're good. The frequency of that happening is almost zero. I know at least one person who has a wood stove in his van build, and he really liked having it for the reasons mentioned earlier. But he's building a bus now, and he's not putting wood stove in it because it's just uninsurable.
Finally got my picture.
All right.
It's got reverse, neutral, overdrive,
Okay, that's not 545.
a D,
Yep.
a 2, and a 1.
Yep. I couldn't tell you which one without looking at my image, but if it has an overdrive, it's not 545.
Well, it's not a 2000 series because
2000 is overdrive.
I don't have overdrive in mine.
Fifth gear is overdrive.
Well, it's not on my shifter.
It may not say OD,
Yeah, okay.
but yeah, your fifth gear is an overdrive gear. Yeah. Sixth gear would be a double overdrive if you had sixth gear enabled. That means you've got a 5-speed or a 6-speed. I couldn't tell you which without looking at the image to verify. So you are good.
Well, this chair is not comfortable anymore.
Yes, this chair is also not comfortable. Oh, wait. Hang on. We got when y'all's one wheel caught fire. Was that covered by insurance? We did not have the coverage that would have covered that for us, so we kind of ate that one. That was a lithium-powered electric scooter type thing that exploded on our bus one day, and we are mostly but not fully recovered from that. But yeah, I got my money back on the purchase, thanks eBay, but that's as far as that went, as far as reimbursement went.
And then Kelsey also says renter's insurance policy to cover your contents inside. So like with my insurance, I asked them about my contents, and I think it was an extra $80 a year for $10,000 in like loose content. The way that they described it to me is if you take your bus and flip it over, everything that falls to your ceiling, that is what would be covered under that add-on. Anything that stays affixed to the flooring, that would be under the vehicle's value of insurance. So if you don't have contents covered in your insurance policy, ask your agent and see if you can do it for under $100 a year, just to have that peace of mind.
Let's see. Y'all trying to play games tonight. This is not the right place to ask those questions.
I already made eyes at both of them.
I was told State Farm to take out a renter's policy to cover the contents. It may differ by the insurance company. Your agent should know.
Well, yeah, it's a rider, so it's an additional add-on to the policy. It may be the same thing as renter's insurance. Your agent just has to figure out what extra line item to add and how much to charge you. So
Great. All right, well, we're going to wrap up here.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for coming to our TED Talk. Thanks to our folks over here on TikTok. And thanks to you guys on YouTube for sticking around.